Good evening and welcome to the Journey Home. Our theme for our discussion about the journey of following Jesus Christ is a theme that everyone in our country seeks after. Everyone in the world seeks after. We seek after it in different ways, in different motives, and sometimes blindly. And as my guest and I were mentioning earlier, sometimes the devil laughs. When we get so caught up in seeking happiness in the wrong places. Our theme is happiness tonight. And what is happiness, and how does one seek it? What's the correct ways? And how, in fact, can we be led into darkness and dead ends through a blind pursuit of happiness? My guest tonight is Carolyn Kollegger. Is that right? Carolyn Kollegger? Make sure I get the last name right. I mean, that's what I was concerned about. And she'll talk tonight about both her and her husband Erwin's journey. And you may recognize her. She was Miss Ohio. She was in movies, television, billboards and commercials. But her life was drastically changed. And she's here to talk about how our Lord brought her true happiness. And it's still a journey. It's always still a journey. That's right. Yeah. Now, you're an important part of the program. Remember, your questions on phone or email are very important. 1-800-221-9460 or send us an email at journeyhome@ewtn.com. Carolyn, welcome to the Journey Home. And you've got a family right out here in front.
I do.
That's right.
I do.
It's almost too bad we can't bring you all up here in front to be a part of this, to see your 4 children and your husband Erwin are right out there.
Yeah.
And the 5th. Due when?
7 weeks.
7 weeks? We could have waited a little bit longer and had...
Could have. For ratings?
But for ratings
sweep or anything like that?
It's been very exciting.
We can come back.
We'll see. Excellent, thank you. Let's begin. I know we got more tonight to talk about than we have time for.
It's a 2-hour special.
So why don't you start with giving us a summary of your early spiritual journey?
Okay. I wouldn't say that it's a spiritual journey at the point that I'll begin it, but I'll start with the fact that I was baptized as a Catholic and went to Catholic grade school, and for which I'm, eternally grateful, because the seeds were planted and my feet were put on the proper path that I ultimately could be brought back home. My husband also was raised Catholic. My aspect was that I came from a broken home, divorced parents. I started modeling and pageantry and contests and so forth, acting within my hometown at a very young age, and I had a lot of success with that. The things that I learned in grade school, I would just say that they were never really lived out at home. So that was something that, in my small mind at the time, it never connected really. I won the Miss Ohio USA pageant, and it was at the Ohio USA pageant that one of the judges, who has an international modeling agency, said that they thought that I should come to New York City and pursue acting and television there. And of course the world is telling you that you would be very happy doing that. It's something most people, or a lot of young women, aspire to. So, and the people from Miss USA Universe Corporation, they also said, that you have a lot of potential and, come to New York. And so that's what landed me in New York. And if anybody was watching television about 15, 20 years ago, there was probably any given number of times they saw me. I had blonde hair, and I did, hey, Madge, Palmolive feels soft like a lotion.
No.
And I did, yes. And I did, Red Lobster, American Express, on and on. I also did off-Broadway theater, and I did films with some, the people that are big names today still working in television and films. And I even had a billboard, as you had alluded to earlier, at the entrance to New York City, bigger than life, in a bathing suit in a swimming pool type of a shot. And one thing was Christy Brinkley was very big at that time, and I remember going on an audition, and we were competing for the actual commercial, and I got it. So to me, I was saying, wow, I'm getting up there. Yes, yep. Exactly. Yep. And but in that, I was actually really lost. I was really in the city, in a big city, and I was lost without direction. There was no grounding. My husband at that time was traveling the world as a skier, and he had been groomed for the Swiss ski team, and he ended up actually accepting an offer to go off and travel professionally, ski professionally, travel the world and go everywhere. So he opted for that, and so he was, in this jet set ski lifestyle and all of the...
You're both in different jet sets, but not together?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. He landed in New York City, and then we met there. And we just started this I'll never forget our first date. He said, I just want to travel, make money, and have fun. And I, who had been lost and kind of searching, like, what am I missing in my life? Because now I have this success, and I'm making money and stuff, and succeeding, doing something many people think that they could never do. I should be totally happy. So I thought that was the happiness, and we started really a life of consumption and just everything. The best restaurants and the best food and the best clothes and the jumping on a plane here and a plane there and buying this house, buy that house, the cars, the boats, everything. And it was very interesting because from the very beginning when I met him, we were 6 months together. We moved in together, and that's where I say, like, what I might have learned when I was young. Well, it never clicked in New York City at that time. Everybody was, doing that, and so we just thought,
set it aside. Anything you had learned there,
yeah,
as a guide, just set aside because of the immediate.
Right, exactly.
Temptation
and
happiness.
Yes, exactly that, and the example of the people we surrounded ourselves with. I'll tell you, in that time in New York City, 10 years, I think I never went to a wedding shower, a baby shower. Nobody we knew had kids. I mean, it was...
Interesting.
Yeah, it was really very...
Speculate why. I mean, we're sure we know.
Yeah.
But the pressures of
Right.
our culture and all, wow.
Right. We moved in together. It was about 6 months after that I found out that I was pregnant. And so I remember sitting in the doctor's office and she was saying to me, she looked at my face and she said, I was remembering that first conversation. I just want to travel, make money, and have fun, on our first date. And she looked at me and she said, you don't want to have this pregnancy, do you? And I just shook my head, more like I don't know what to do. And she said, that's okay, we'll terminate it. It'll be fine. We'll do a procedure. And I thought, oh, a procedure? I was 20 years old. Oh, that sounds fine. So I went along, just went with the flow and went ahead and we killed this baby. We had this abortion. Yeah, yeah, exactly. He thought, well, she took care of it quite neatly, this. But I'll tell you, from that moment on, there was nothing. If God ever meant for me to be together with Erwin, which I did feel that, this was really a slap in the face. There was nothing going to be sacramental about this relationship, and no blessing in that relationship. And I think we both sensed something was wrong, but we couldn't put our finger on it. Things started to get a little rocky, a little arguing here and there, discontent. The only time it was good was when we were doing this traveling and so forth, and shopping, spending. And then I did what everybody was, doing. You changed the contraceptive method, and then it should be okay. And then a year later, I was pregnant again, and back at that same doctor, and she said, we can go ahead and terminate that one too. We can terminate the pregnancy. And so I said, okay, because we have this plan. We're going to travel, make money, and have fun. And when we were doing those things, it was very, very high. So it was very tempting to stay in that mode, in that way of thinking. And as I said, nobody else was having wedding showers and baby showers and all of this. So we did that, and then it was getting very bad. We were arguing. Nothing that I could do would please him, and we were arguing all the time in between little moments of happiness, so forth. And I had set a date. Like I said, 5 years. I'll stay with him, And if we don't get married, then I'm going to have to leave and find somebody else, you know. I don't want to end up an old maid, you know, and not married, right? So I had this timeline in my head. And, you know, the Lord, you know, I don't know, he was really trying to get our attention and turn things around for us, coming from, you know, our backgrounds that we were baptized and so forth. But I got pregnant again, just prior to this 5-year deadline. And I said, I'm going to keep this pregnancy. And he said, no, you're not, or I'm going to leave. And I really and truly believed him. But at that point, I thought that the only thing that was going to help our marriage, believe it or not, our relationship, was if we were married. We were fighting and everything all the time. And you know, I just thought that this was the answer. If we got married, everything will be fine, you know, kind of a thing. And anyway, we ended up, I made him come with me to the third abortion. And I said, you know, I'm not going to go there alone. And he came. And so it was something that we both experienced. It was at that point, that he got a vasectomy. So, I mean, to add insult to injury, 3 abortions and then a vasectomy to make sure that we didn't have these children, because the world was saying, you know, you need to have so much money if you're going to have kids, and if you maybe have one, but actually they weren't even saying one back there.
If you're going to stay at that level that you've been seeking.
You need to be footloose and fancy free.
Right.
Yeah, you can't have anything tying you down. You can't have anything ruining your figure, and so forth. So anyway, that was after the vasectomy. Things they were like on a downward spiral after that.
Maybe stop there would be a good place to just stop for it and pause. There you are. I mean, you're on. Not only have you reached the peak of what everyone, maybe even watching on TV, just envious of where you and your husband have arrived, but you're taking drastic steps to make sure you can stay there.
Yeah, and be happy.
To be happy at that level, which even, of course, now looking back, means the taking of lives. At that level, summarize a bit, which we are hearing you describe, but how would you have described, what is the definition of happiness at that level?
Well, some of the things that come to my mind would be the success that I was achieving. Now, I was diet, you know, and self-indulgence, really looking at yourself a lot and how you appeared to others is very important. Making sure you were manicured all the time, and you know, you went to the trainer and you were worked out properly, and then you had diet was a very big thing. I had a nutritionist and I had a thyroid specialist, and I was doing bizarre things, you know, to then make sure that I stayed down, because I'll tell you, well, some of the bizarre things were like eating a box of chocolate X-Lax at one time, or glasses of vinegar, because they said that it just burned away. I can't imagine what I did. You know, I can't imagine. I think back, but I'll tell you, I was at 108 pounds, which they say is this great television weight, and you could count my ribs. I was passing out places, and I was never doing better.
In your career.
In my career, and people complimenting me. That brought me great happiness. You know, that they were, you know.
It would be easy to say when you look back and define everything that would have fit the list of what it meant to be happy in that culture. Everything was external.
Yes.
Everything was external.
Yes.
Because it's what other people saw, and that was happiness.
Yes.
All right, what opened your heart to Jesus again and the church?
Well, we had, I made a trip to an island with a friend called, and that would be the case. They'd call and say, you know, I'm going to jump on a plane and go to this island or whatever, and we'd jump on the plane and we would go along too for a weekend. Or I can't even think about it today, you know, it's just so beyond thinking about. But we were on an island, and he went off when I was on the beach, and he bought a house. And maybe in all of this is where God said, this is my chance. We had Christian neighbors on either side. We moved into that house. We left New York and said, we're going to move to this island. We're going to live here a while. He was going to make a real killing in the real estate market, and then we were going to go out to California, and I'd keep acting out in Los Angeles. And we were having these fights, these arguments in between, you know, these great high moments. And after one, I must have made so much noise that this neighbor could no longer keep silent. And she came over and she knocked on the door and she said, I was crying, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, I'm fine," and and this sort of thing. And she said, she says, in the gentlest sort of way, "You need to get help. You guys need to get help. You need to go to church and talk to your pastor." And while Erwin had said many times he would never go to any sort of a counseling session, I thought, oh my gosh, church. What a novel idea. A church and a priest, this could work, It was, it's so simple. You say, how could you have been so blind?
No, again, the devil laughs when he gets you way up here on a false search for happiness, to get blind to the real solutions.
Yes. Well, when I mentioned it to him, and it was grace there, he agreed to go. So that really opened the door for us to start to come home and us to turn things around. As I said, I think we both knew in our heart, but we couldn't pinpoint why we were unhappy. We knew something wasn't right and that we, had to correct something. So we went to see the pastor at church, and he gave us absolution. We had confession. He recommended we get together with a Catholic marriage counselor, which we did. And so then there was this great deal of hatred and anger and with Erwin that I finally was able to share with him. And it was the first time he was able to say he was sorry. I mean, actually in that environment. I mean, before that, he was always one to say, if you don't like things the way they are, you can leave. There's the door. I'm not going to change. You need to change. And I do hear women today say that they have that same experience. Yeah. So anyway, it was hopeless.
I hear a friend out there.
But it did, it felt really, really hopeless. But then there was hope. Now the hope wasn't, boom, we went to church and started to go back to mass and everything was done, and that. But it opened our hearts and our minds to change. And one of the things that comes to my mind about that time was and how we ultimately came to I'll just want to say that we had a lot of worldly friends, and it was a yacht, and it was this, these great parties and this and that, and it seemed that after we got, back to church, and things should be all of a sudden bright and happy, that we came down to a deeper moment, and I mean a darker time, and. Do I have the time to keep going into that?
Yes, keep going. Because this is really, some people get this idea that, search it, and all of a sudden you come back to church and everything's just great. We're in heaven. Well, wait a second.
Yeah, and that he came back and he changed instantaneously. And, I had to change too also. But no, everything was very gradual. I'll see what direction I want to go in from there. But anyway, I'll say that we did continue to fight and to argue. Yeah. But I started to pray the rosary. And that, I think, opened the door to a lot of prayer and intercessory prayer from our mother, our Blessed Mother. We did that. I started to go to daily Mass. And Erwin and his way of thinking at that time was very hard-hearted and very, business-like and a tough personality, and thought that was a waste of time. But then he met a man that he admired or looked up to, in business, and the man said, I think you need to go to daily Mass with Carolyn every day if you want to make this marriage work. So he started to come to daily Mass with me, and then after that he recommended Marriage Encounter, Curcio, all of the things that the Catholic Church offers. And so we started to do those things. It was at the point of, we got to a very low point when we started to do those things and we got to know who Jesus was. And then we got to know what we had done that offended him, and when that struck me, it hit me as it was post-abortion syndrome. And it never could have happened if we hadn't started the journey back home. But again, it wasn't instantaneous. And when I had these abortions, the first one that I had, if I might mention what that kind of experience is like, I was in this abortion clinic. They're still doing abortions on Park Avenue in New York City. And I remember I remember during the abortion, hearing that it was a boy, and which is especially poignant to me, at the later time that we named these babies. But when I woke up, I heard women crying, wailing, like animals in pain is the only way I can describe it. It was so horrific. And I thought that they were having physical pain. And I thought, thank God I'm not having that kind of pain. I never in a million years thought or was told that I would ever feel anything or think anything about it. And after the second abortion, I again, woke up hearing this wailing, but I didn't experience anything like that. And after the third abortion, I was the one that woke up like that. And then I knew that I had done this thing that I could never take back and change, and how horrible it was. And I was, screaming and crying, and these nurses were, be quiet, it's going to be okay. And so they had that kind of a mentality. They didn't want you rubbing off on anyone else, kind of a thing. So that was the abortion, the experience.
Later you experienced that post-abortion thing.
Yes.
While you're in the midst of your journey back to the Lord.
When I realized that I had killed babies, that these were little itty-bitty souls that he entrusted me with. I mean, I couldn't imagine that I could do something so awful, or even be in a frame of mind that I could do something so awful.
Was there from that point to today, as you're now growing in your spiritual journey still, and was it a gradual surrendering? Was there any particular moment now when both Erwin and you let go of everything to truly receive from Christ what he all has to give?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. With me, it was in realizing the post-abortion syndrome. That happened a little bit before Erwin's, but I actually had, I did not want to go on living. And I didn't know how I could go on living, let me put it that way, because I didn't, I wasn't really fully, now I was starting to know Jesus, but I guess I didn't look at the fact that he could change things in my life, and that there would be grace, and that he could make me feel better, or any of those things, and that he could make me want to go on living. Yes. And so at that moment is when I really started to yell and scream and say, you tell me what this is all about. What is life all about? And I was really, I say it kind of light now, but it was very much a time of, high emotion and despair and everything. And he came to me in a dream. In a dream, this all was answered for me. And I realized that he said to me, it's just about doing the best that you can. In other words, maybe I was trying a little too hard for something, working a little bit too hard there. But also that were the things, the choices I was making, were they choices for him? So in other words, Erwin and I were partying a lot. Well, was that the best thing I could do with my life? Was this arguing and fighting? Was this the best thing that I could do with my life, the wonderful life that he gave me? And if I would just start to think in terms that way. So that was great. When I woke up in the morning, I know how to go on living. For Erwin, it came in a Curcio retreat, because after that moment, I knew that having a family was what I was called to do and what I should be doing. But I had to get Erwin in thinking in that, because now he still wasn't thinking in that mode. And so I said to him, if you don't want to have children, we need to get a divorce, and we can get a divorce, because you and I have to be, we were married and we're supposed to procreate, and and if you're not up for that, then we're going to get a divorce. And I was thinking that was along the lines of the Catholic Church. And when I said that, at that same moment, things were starting to crumble. Everything that he had ever done financially and stuff that had worked now was not working. It was like roadblock, obstacle, everything falling away. For us, that needed to happen. The Lord doesn't work that way with everyone, I'm sure.
Right.
But it needed to, he says he needed to get hit by a 2x4 over the head. So we lost everything, and now I was saying that I wanted a divorce if he wasn't going to have a family. And he had had this vasectomy. So he was faced with having to get it reversed. And on a Curcio weekend, he came back from that weekend and he said, you know, I met Jesus on that weekend in those men that I was with, and I want what they have. And we're going to go ahead and get the vasectomy reversed. And when he came out of that surgery, he said he felt like a weight had been lifted off of him, that he felt like he came back home. And so now we were in a place that the Lord could work with us. And within 3 months, even the doctor, was only his second reversal. And he said, I don't know, if it's going to work, and, you pay this incredible amount of money, and got to be cash, and Erwin had a job, and it gave just that amount of cash that he needed to pay for the reversal, but we didn't know if it was going to work. Within 3 months, I was pregnant with Zachary, and now, it keeps happening, they keep coming. People say, so are you going to stop now? And I'm about to say, why? But anyway,
let's thank you very much. And in fact, the sad thing is, the show always has the encumbrances of time. So what we want to tell the audience, though, that a more detailed aspect of a description of your journey is in Patrick Madrid's new Surprised by Truth 2. So if you've seen that book or would like to get a copy of it, they may give an address somewhere on the screen, but your whole story is in yours and Erwin's.
Yes.
The couple minutes we have before break, let's talk about now, from a Catholic perspective, following Jesus, how do we understand happiness? What is a more appropriate, Christ-centered way to look at pursuing happiness?
Well, I think one of the things for us was that we never thought that we could be happy without the relationships that we had. And that would be, these friends that had yachts and did all these things. And when they were kind of taken away or fell away because now we weren't, up there able to do things with them, we thought, well, we'll never be happy again. But the Lord was very interesting because our hearts changed and our minds changed. Little by little, he put, this Christian into our life, this Christian into our life, and surrounded us then with these people that there is no comparison to the relationships. So that's when I think of the happiness, as a Catholic now, what is the happiness? Also, when I think about pregnancy, and having children, do I have the time to tell a little story about what I saw on TV?
Please.
When I was channel surfing and flipping through, and I saw the program of internationally known daughter of an internationally known celebrity.
A celebrity that everyone would know.
Yes.
You've seen on TV many times. It was her daughter who was pregnant, right?
Was pregnant.
Doing this show on how to prepare for your pregnancy.
Yeah, how one should prepare for their pregnancy. And she was having her first child, and I thought, well, I'm on my 5th one, so this should be interesting. I'll see how it kind of relates, And it was coming out of Hollywood, and so she said, well, the first thing that you do is you go to your nutritionist every day, and the nutritionist is going to make you a frappe and a smoothie of mangoes and papayas and all the nutrition that you need for the baby, and then have you do lunch with garbanzo beans and some lettuce, and you'll meet with her once a week, and you'll get your whole diet that you need to follow, and then you're going to go to your trainer, and you're going to have the latest training outfit for maternity on, and they're going to stretch you and bend you and get you all in that great shape for labor and delivery. And then after that was going to the maternity boutique, and the latest thing they were showing was the spandex or latex, and was just, so figure-fitting, tight, showing off your maybe your first and only pregnancy, I don't know, but for huge amounts of money you're paying for this.
And I'm thinking probably the goal in that culture is to gain as little weight as possible.
Yes.
Of course.
Exactly. And then going to fix up your nursery, going into this particular store there and spending $6,000 on this rocking horse and this perfect thing and that perfect thing. And my mouth, it was a real show. That's the sad thing about it, was they were utterly serious.
They weren't making a caricature, they weren't
No.
joking. Absolutely serious.
No, they were absolutely, and
Sure.
as I'm going from one thing to the next, my mouth is just dropping. Mainly, we found that the less we do with each one, the more joy that we have in it, you know. But my mouth is just dropping. I'm thinking, are they for real? And then it struck me, do they even care about that baby's soul? Is there even going to be a crucifix in the bedroom? But they're going to most likely turn around and hand that baby over to a nanny to be raised by a nanny, you know. And so there was the irony there. So for us, you know, again, that the happiness in being a Catholic is a great detachment from any of those things.
Again, also talking this afternoon with your husband Erwin, also expressing how you too exude happiness, confirms the fact that as Catholics we understand that happiness involves highs, but it also involves suffering.
Yeah.
It's the reality of our walk with Christ. It involves, if God calls us, we can be happy and receive great riches if that's what God called us to do. But He called us to have great responsibility, because it isn't the riches. Because even with those riches or success that a person might have in Christ comes now your responsibilities, but always that call to detachment. Yeah. Recognizing that happiness is a great gift, and I think your whole lives describe that to us. We're going to take a break, come back with your questions, because there's a lot more that we'd like to talk about.
Yeah.
We'll presume that your questions will bring them out. All right? So we'll talk to you in just a bit. Welcome back to the Journey Home. We've been talking during the break about all the things we also want to talk about during the first half, and we'll see whether your questions bring them up, because there's a lot of issues that were opened here, and I think they're very important issues, because I know that one of the way God's created us is to seek happiness. That's a part of our being. It's just that sadly we live in a culture that defines happiness completely different than the way God intended. Let's take this first email, because it touches on, what you were striving for earlier in your adult life. This is from Josh in Maine. Carolyn, when you were living in the fast lane, did you find others who wanted to live a virtuous life but felt trapped by the lifestyle? Mm-hmm. Did you encounter any in the midst of that you can recall?
Yeah. When I reflect back, I know, and I have said that, I didn't go to any wedding showers or bridal showers or baby showers, and there were no weddings that we were invited to, and so it's an interesting place and an interesting field. You're in there with these people, and it's acting, and so a lot, everyone's acting happy and acting like they're fulfilled, and everything is fine, all acting like that. If anybody really, I think, had a faith walk, they were not out there, openly evangelizing to me.
And they hid it well.
I
just remembered recently there was a television enactment of The Great Gatsby, and I remember watching that and thinking that, when you're at that level and you just keep yourself surrounded by these people, that you can just keep burying your guilt, trying to bury your guilt. But there's a couple of things I was thinking about, though, was that you were describing watching this television show and seeing how absurd that presentation was.
Yeah.
But you didn't think it was absurd then.
No.
It's a work of grace.
Yes.
It's a work of grace. that's kind of a way of standing back and looking, I've been changed.
Yeah.
I can see that this is. The people at that level often are just so, kind of like in C.S. Lewis' Screw Tape Letters, the little demons don't want to keep people from places where their conscience can be.
Right.
Let's keep them in places where they're constantly pulled off center.
Right.
Let's take our next caller. This is Pam from Illinois. What's your question for us tonight?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. My question is about a friend who I have. She had an abortion in her college years, and it's been probably about almost 10 years now since that time. But she does not believe that what she did was wrong. She still feels abortion is a woman's choice. But my concern is that she has a lot of the post-abortion syndrome symptoms, like she's not able to maintain a relationship with a man. She has a rather low self-esteem. And what I'd like to know is could you recommend something I could do for her to help her to see this in a different light so that she can face this, what she's gone through, and then be on the road to recovery?
Thank you, Pam. Thank you.
Oh, I would pray for her. The greatest thing that we can do. I mean, at some point our words don't get through anymore, or they offend or put off. And I think prayer is the greatest thing. So I know sometimes people feel like, well, I'm not doing enough if I'm just praying. Oh my gosh, it's huge. Light candles, novenas.
Just isn't a word that should be put with in the same sentence with
Yeah, but
prayer.
you hear people say that.
Yes, but it shouldn't.
I'm just praying about this and nothing's happening or whatever. Yeah, I would be continually praying, and the Holy Spirit, God will keep trying things to get her attention, and the Holy Spirit will work at some point. And I know this because I lived it when there was no hope, when there was total despair, thinking that this relationship that he would never change. I don't think that you could even imagine the kind of person that Erwin was from who you met today, and who we spent time together with. I mean, God did an incredible work in him. And
talk, in fact, a little bit about the ministry, the apostle that the two of you are involved with.
Yeah, the Lord called us.
Talk about 180 degrees.
Yeah. I want to share something about Erwin and a change that really took place, because it is something that really happens to a lot of people. When we were pregnant with Zachary, our oldest, we thought that we couldn't live on one income. And a lot of people say, oh, you have to have the two incomes, and you have to be able to give them everything that they need. What is that? Give them everything, that they need or want.
It's infinite if you define it in those terms.
Yeah, and destructive anyway, so, better to not. But, so we said, at that time, I was doing some sort of a marketing job, and it was a $40,000 income. We were living in Naples, and I was still waiting, for this move back out when I was going to keep going out in Los Angeles. And he had his income, so we thought we needed the two incomes. And so we said, well, we'll have the baby, and a couple months after we have the baby, I'll go back to work. That 3 month, a lot of people say 3 months old, and then I'll, do the a daycare or a nanny or whatever. And as we got closer to having him, we said, oh my gosh, this is real. We can't think that we're going to leave this baby. And so he said, well, maybe we could somehow, maybe we just could do it. We can do it. We can survive on my income until he gets to be 5 or 6 and goes to kindergarten. And again, we're just talking about the one, because that's all we can envision affording. And so he says, but I don't know, I'm really nervous about it. I don't like it. And then we had him, and we said, there's no way we can leave this child. I mean, that incredible bond that God put in our hearts. And so after a year went by, in fact, even before that, I'd go to the store and I would spend $30, on food, because I was really trying to stretch it and make it work, and concerned that we were the only ones in charge of the money, that there wasn't this infinite God with this infinite amount of money to provide for us. And so anyway, a year went by, and I said, do you realize a whole year went by and you supported us just on your income? And he said, no, really? I said, yeah. And now it's 8 years, 5 kids, all the doctor bills from all the labor and deliveries. And God keep providing and providing just from that trust
trusting.
that's turned over to Him. But the Lord called us to family ministry. You know, some people say, well, are you doing abortion counseling or anything like that? And maybe He knew, you know, the heart that I have maybe couldn't do that, but he gave us a heart for family ministry, family retreats, and so we wanted to keep going on retreats, but we didn't want him to go alone and then me to go alone, or leave the kids and we go together as a couple. And so we started organizing these family retreats, and that's what we do today. We do. We have another one coming up, and we have it on our website.
I think your website will be posted here too, in case anyone's
Yeah.
interested. Let's take another email. This is from Diane in Victoria, Texas. Dear Carolyn, I am in love with a man who is very bad for me spiritually. I want to think he can change when we're married, but I need help. What can I do to have the marriage like yours? Diane, Victoria, Texas.
Oh, pray about it before you get married, I think. If I would have known then what I know now. Well, you know, if I was advising my own kids, I think that we would go for counseling, you know, for, where all the issues are laid out. You know, do you want to have children because this is what God is calling us to in the sacrament of marriage? Are we clear that it's a sacrament? You know, and all of these various aspects, I would try to get them laid out ahead of time. And I would, doing it over or doing it differently, I don't think I would have, if I would have had that direction and guidance, I wouldn't have gotten into the marriage and then, you know, been in this hopeless, helpless situation. I mean, I don't think that that's the right way to, that's kind of like the cart before the horse.
And we're always very hesitant to do counseling over television anyway, but a couple of things I'll throw in here. First of all, you've got to get local spiritual advice on that with your priest. And since being bold here, I can't tell anyone how to make a decision, but there's nothing more important in life than our soul, our spiritual journey. That's the most important thing. And Scripture tells us not to be unequally yoked, which means being drawn into a situation where you're torn between two gods, our heavenly Lord, or money, or things, or people. And when you get married in a situation, love does not solve everything.
Right.
It does not solve everything. Your spiritual journey must never be sacrificed. I don't know.
I'm so glad Erwin and our conversions happened so close together, and we were equally yoked in that. And I do know Christians that'll come and they have a spouse that is not a Christian and who is, you know, wants to leave or walk away from the marriage, and what can they do and what should they do and stuff. So I'm very thankful for that. That's exactly right.
Mary from Ohio, our next caller. What's your question for us tonight?
Hi there, Marcus.
Hello.
It's just a pleasure. Every week I'm tuned into you, trying to line myself right up there with the church. Carolyn, it's so nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
I can relate to your story because I moved to New York to pursue my dreams as a professional singer, and met my husband there and kind of got in that fast track pace also, and now raising 3 boys in Ohio, and I'm so glad to be a wife and a mom. My question to you is, when you were dating, you were living together, and then you're married, and you were going through all that turmoil and the arguing and getting into kind of all that negativism in your marriage. How did you, of course, the Lord, I'm sure, helped bring you out of it, but how did you really change it between the two of you, and how did your husband really change where you could make the marriage survive?
Thank you, Mary. Down to the nuts and bolts here. We know it's grace, but...
Oh, tremendous grace is everything. And like I said, I think, you know, praying the rosary and then the Blessed Mother's intercession there. I know Erwin's mother prayed the rosary every day, and I'm sure she prayed the rosary every day for him and then for us. So that combination of prayer and then grace, because it was a great grace. I mean, people will say, well, you know, if I ask my husband or my boyfriend to go to church or go for counseling, he'll say no, or we've gone for counseling and it's just not working. It takes two. I think that's an important thing, and for both hearts to allow for the grace to work if one is blocking it and saying no to the grace, then it's not going to yield fruit. But I like what she said about staying at home with the 3 kids, and being a mother. What a great gift. What a great pleasure, privilege. I have to stop, many times in each day, and I just say thank you for this privilege. Now I know my kids might say, she just got done yelling. How's she saying it? She just got done yelling at me, correcting me, But even in the worst moment, I know that it's a gift, and I don't ever want to take it for granted. And anybody that could let that pass and think that something, $1 million that somebody has, and all the nice clothes or the manicures, all the self-indulgence, any of that stuff, cannot buy what we can get compliments of Jesus. And then the even greater gift is that with that detachment, which is also a grace, comes this heart just so free and filled with joy. To enjoy that and to acknowledge that. I mean, it's...
And I know my wife, Mary, would chime right in there if she were here, because with her master's degree and her career and counseling, we weren't married 3 months, and she said, I want to be a mother. I want to be home. And she resigned from her job, and now she's been homeschooling and raising our children, And, we got to take another phone call. Maybe we'll go to something else if we have time, but so much we can talk about. Sally from Ohio, what's your question for us tonight?
Carolyn, I was wondering, at one point after your 3rd abortion, did you get married? And were you married by a Catholic priest, or was it just a minister?
Thank you.
Yeah. At first, we got married right away by a justice of the peace, and that was in New York. And it was not, the marriage that anybody hopes for or intends or plans. It was just that we were coming to that 5-year deadline, and I said that I was gonna leave, and I had the abortion, but then I was gonna leave, and he said, well, then we'll get married, and better do it quick, kind of a thing. But we did, when we went to the church and we saw the pastor and we started to go for counseling, we did get married in the church. And so I'm sure, again, any of those sacraments, when you talk about things that you can do for your friends, or that what your friends should do, or what you should do because you have this situation of not being able to discern the sacraments, frequent communion, frequent confession.
I want to make a comment. You mentioned the rosary, just in case for those who are not Catholic or are watching and may think we Catholics think it's some kind of magical thing that we do. When you think about what the rosary really is, it's an intense focusing on Jesus' sacrifice for us, and Mary's praying intercession for us, and her surrender to God for about 20 to 25 minutes of intense prayer, focusing on Christ, His sacrifice, His love, with scriptural prayers. And I'm thinking back in my days as a Protestant, that is intense of a committed evangelical I was, that rarely on a daily basis would I have 20 to 25 minutes of intense mental focused prayer. It's a wonderful prayer of surrender is really what it is.
Yes.
It's a prayer of surrender.
Yes, I like that word you used too, surrender, because I think that unless you get to that point of surrender, men and women also, that nothing can happen. And for Erwin, in the point of the vasectomy reversal, and just agreeing, okay, Lord, I'm going to do this, and you've got to take my life now and do with it what you will, because I'm botching it up. I'm not making it go. And in those moments of total surrender, that's when we're made weak and He's strong. And the most magnificent things happen. But yes, it's so true about the rosary.
And like he says, sometimes it takes a 2x4 to get our attention. And each of us needs a different size one
right, exactly.
to get our attention.
Right.
Let's take our next email. This is Dorothea from Utah. Hi, Carolyn. Sins such as abortion seem so wrong. How is it that so many people are completely unaware of the sinfulness of these actions?
You know what? It's a very good question. It's a very good question. And I'll say, again, I was 20 years old, and at the time of the first one, I came from Youngstown, Ohio. I mean, I really did not know that much. I certainly didn't have any sort of a degree in anatomy, and my mind wasn't there. And so I never really thought much about, what is a pregnancy, what is this, and really I wasn't raised with around a lot of, small children. But when they said procedure, they're very misleading. It's just a procedure.
Called verbal engineering.
Yes.
Creative words to make it sound all right.
Yeah, when you think a 20-year-old, does that sound old or young to you? When I think what I was at 20, when I think what I was at 17 years old in New York City, just a miracle that I even survived. Yeah. But I don't think 20 is, a great mental age for making huge discernments about things. But I'll say too that that my mom was in the medical profession. Had been even a hospital administrator at the highest point, and was very supportive of the acting and what I was doing with that, and really caught up in the feminist movement and having children, that sort of thing, getting married. That was what you did after you had all your fun, you traveled and did everything, and really just a product of that whole time, but never explained to me what I was doing. It's your choice, it's your decision.
And many people just see it focused on choice, freedom,
you have a good head
privacy,
on your shoulders. Yes.
And sometimes the loving thing to do.
Right.
And completely ignoring whether, in an ultimate sense, this is a moral thing to do.
Yeah.
And whether seeing this conceived human being as a true person with the right to life.
Right.
And quickly, because we are running time, something else about your journey which connected with ours a little bit too, because we've had 3 miscarriages and now 3 sons. And it was something we discovered after becoming a Catholic, about those other lives. Talk about that discovery for yourself.
Oh, well, when we were pregnant with Zachary, somebody said to us, or we were invited to go to our diocesan Mass, the Feast of the Holy Innocents. And so we were given a great opportunity to name these children, know that they're in heaven with God, and that they're there praying for us, that we're going to be reunited one day. And so we gave them names: Paul Erwin, Claire Louise, and John Michael. And so they're up there. And I have one person, a friend that is Protestant and had a miscarriage recently, and I said, did you name the baby and have some sort of a service? No. What a great idea.
Yeah.
That would be very nice. And so they were really touched by that possibility of that connection. It's not just overdone and we go on,
Final question. I think in my audience's eyes this might be a kind of dumb question, because your relationship with Christ exudes from you. But if you would, talk about, in summary, how coming back to the church has drawn you closer to your Lord Jesus.
You can't come back to the church and not come closer to Jesus, because it's like the Catechism says, why are we created? To know, love, and serve God. How do we can't love Him and we can't serve Him if we don't know Him. How do we know Him? And the Mass, and going to Mass daily, or frequent as possible, we're hearing the whole Bible. That's how we get to know Him. That's how we get to know His love. And then through the sacraments, and receiving Holy Communion, receiving Him. So that's how we've come to know Him, so intimately. And it's all the church.
Carolyn, thank you very much. Time flies. For both your witness and that of Erwin, both of you, when you get to know them, just for me, just briefly, to see how the Lord has made such a difference, it's just a reminder that it's really grace. It's a gift. It is a gift. And I was thinking of this verse in the end of Psalm 144, when David, after summarizing many ways in which the Lord blesses our lives, he says, "Happy the people whose God is the Lord." All those people that you were talking about your whole life, God was everything else but, seeking everything else. But happiness comes when our God is the Lord. And making God our Lord involves surrender, detachment, accepting suffering as a part of the way He purges us to become all that He's created us to be. And thank you for joining us tonight on the journey home. As always, I pray that Carolyn's message has been a challenge to you. If you're seeking happiness in the wrong places, know that you can truly only find it in Christ, because he himself is a gift to us from a loving Father who loves you and I so much that he would give his Son for our lives to save us from sin. Thank you for joining us on the journey home. We'll see you again next week.